Hi everybody, this is Philip, take 2 for my evening update. Sorry, I didn't realize the last one didn't record. It told me it was recording, so we'll try again. So far so good with my connection, still in the green, so I'll wait till you guys to come in and recap, get my stuff pulled up here again, show you guys what's going on here with eruption today. We've had some major changes in eruption, kind of across the board. Hi everybody, thanks for joining. Sorry about that. Many hours. Oh, alright, I'm green. Alright guys, can you guys hear me? Hi guys, thanks for joining. Looks like my connection is once again not very good. I'll do what I can to stay with you guys here. Sorry about the false start earlier. But we'll talk about what's going on here tonight, and hopefully the connection will stay. We can keep it going for as long as possible. So today there's been a whole bunch of changes at the volcano. You guys I'm sure have heard. A lot of things are going on. Kind of starting at the summit. There's been no summit collapse in probably close to 60 hours now. So no collapse, no surge. We've had the longest maybe a lull or a pause between the output of Fissure 8, the longest one we've had in a while, to the point where the speed of the lava flow has slowed down quite a bit in the channel and is kind of crested over. It looks like it's kind of going through the tubes in there and still flowing out actually in some new places. And I think everyone is wanting to say that the eruption is over right now, and I think it seems like this is the first absolutely clear sign that it is ending. Maybe not over yet, but the ending is. We've been kind of saying, well, this might be the beginning of the end. This might be the beginning of the end with all the fluctuations we've had, and as recently as that 4.1 earthquake we had in the south flank a few days ago, and saying, oh, maybe that'll change the way that the pressure goes through there. Maybe another sign here, another sign there, and so here we have a whole bunch of things happening at once that are telling us that that there is a big significant change in a volcano. It may not be the actual end, but it's the ending, as far as I can see. Some major changes coming. It may be that we discover that the lava flow still keeps trickling out for a while. It's hard to say that won't happen at this point. We all hope that it won't, and definitely any reduction in the flow is a good one, but as I've been kind of warning, the reduction brings with it instability as well. So we kind of hope it all works out pretty well here as we kind of wind it down. The first thing I wanted to kind of point out to you guys is that we have a different signal of our tilt. Let me turn the camera around here. So looking at our tilt signal, we're kind of zoomed in here in our 2-day view because of our lack of a big collapse event. Hasn't actually forced a big spike in the scale to adjust. So just reinforce it here compared to the 1-week plot of our tilt at the summit, which goes from 120 to minus 60. There's 180 microradian range. This one has a 60 microradian range, about a third of that, going from minus 20 to 40. So we're kind of zoomed in here. We can kind of see these spikes are the magnitude 3 earthquakes, 3.5 earthquakes that we have kind of going fairly constantly. Our kind of bigger drop that we were used to having. We're not kind of sure exactly how that is, like the first release of the coming collapse event. And what we're seeing now today is kind of slowing down, and we have less and less of these earthquakes. And in fact, the actual tilt plot seems to be flattening out almost. You know, it's kind of hard to say at this scale, you know, because it is a pretty big range of 60 microradians from top to bottom. But it's definitely a change in the pattern from what we've seen before, right? So kind of to recap our tilt story here. Here we are today with this, you know, kind of fairly regular pattern until maybe around in here. And after this little step, we seem to have kind of be slowing them down instead. Now we're kind of flattening out and having almost no more of these little magnitude 3 earthquakes at the moment. So kind of compared to before, you know, that's how it normally looks. You kind of get a whole bunch kind of building more and more and more and more and more. Then you get your big event, you know. And when we had a couple of cycles ago, we actually had it going more and more and more. This big drop had a big spike also. We thought, oh, maybe it's resonating with the bottom, or maybe it's kind of getting to a point where it can't collapse anymore. Maybe a smaller version of that here on the plot yesterday. But overall, it kind of definitely has seemed to be. It's hard to say if it's exactly flatline because the scale is so kind of zoomed out. But you know, even in this kind of more zoomed in view, it looks like it's fairly flatline. But even that's still got a pretty big range. It seems like there's definitely a change that's happened there at the summit. So if this is because it actually hit the bottom and it can't collapse any further, it might be one thing. But it could also be because there's magma actually making its way in from below into the summit region once again. You know, it could be that totally independent of anything else going on, that for whatever reason, the magma that was kind of diverting into the rift zone is now diverting into the summit again. And if that's the case, we might see the thing actually starting to inflate, kind of rising up in the coming days. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But definitely, this is a welcome change for everyone in Puna, that the fact that the earthquakes have slowed down quite a bit, and a collapse event that is long overdue. I haven't counted the hours, but I think estimate somewhere around 60 hours or so is our longest interval so far. I think it stopped collapsing. Well, let's look here at the more recent here. I'm going to reload this plot here of our current spectrograph. All the different feeds we have for the different instruments, looking across all the different wavelengths that earthquake energy is released and recorded. So, okay, here we have a period from 20 minutes ago. Just showing in Greenwich Mean Time, almost 8:30, going until almost 8:50, which is what time it is now here in Hawaii. It's 10:50 p.m. So that's 8:50 Greenwich Mean Time, and you guys can see that unlike the one I showed you guys the last few times, we have no magnitude 3 earthquakes in the past 3 hours, or I'm sorry, 20 minutes. And when I started doing this about an hour ago, it was a similar thing as well. You know, we haven't actually seen any of these magnitude 3 earthquakes in a while. So kind of look at where these earthquakes have been. Let me load here the earthquakes map from the USGS. There's a pattern of them as they've been over the last day. You know, still mostly in the caldera. There's been this kind of pattern of earthquakes kind of stringing to the south and then kind of clumping along this area right here. You guys can see I've drawn on this map. There's the fault lines in the area. This area is called the Kauai fault system. This is another Kauai, apart from the one that's down in Puna. There's one up here as well. And this kind of connects the rift zone to the summit. It's kind of a structural, almost like it's not exactly a hinge, but it's, it's a connection that allows like the rift zone to kind of move down that way, and the southwest rift to move down over here, and for it to kind of expand and kind of settle all the way from here all the way to here, in fact, so that in itself is not unusual, and kind of looking at back at the pattern for some of the other days. Let's see what I got here for you guys. Okay, let me zoom out a little bit here. So this is for the last month. I'll zoom into the last week here. See what it shows us. Last day. And looking at the last 20 or so. So looking at the last 20 is interesting because we actually see there's a cluster by Halemaumau. There's some kind of at the east edge of the caldera. There's this cluster down here at the edge of the Kauai system. But then we have another cluster, which has been happening already, that's kind of over the south caldera, and that's the area that's above the deep magma chamber, in fact, is right over there. So that's the deep magma chamber that is sitting under Kīlauea. We talked about how there's a shallow chamber kind of underneath the eastern edge of Halemaumau. That one may in fact be all the way collapsed and gone by now, you know, and that might be potentially why we're seeing the change. And we're seeing a concentration down in the area over here now. So there's definitely a lot less. It seems like the whole thing as a piston is dropping less, and that could be because that shallow source is kind of depleted all the way, maybe collapsed all the way, or collapsed as much as it's going to. It's hard to say. These earthquakes in here, you know, are indicative of that deeper magma chamber, but that in itself is not that unusual. If you kind of focus on that area, let me go back to the day view. You guys can see there's been a cluster in there even over the last day, you know, not just over the last 20. And if you go back over the last week, you guys can see there's actually a whole bunch. All the yellow ones also are kind of all in that same area, kind of buried underneath there, but they've been happening there. And we'll go back to the last month, and then the radius of these things actually expands even farther, right? So these kind of South Caldera earthquakes have been happening for a while, and it's not so much now that they're still happening, but it's more that, you know, the other ones are not as much happening. Oh, I've gone green again. Hope you guys can hear me now. So not sure what happened exactly right there, but we were talking about the earthquakes, and let's see if I can keep you guys swing back to the earthquakes. And I'm not sure exactly where I cut out, but basically this is the last day. This is the last 20, so you know we might have a little concentration over the last 20 right through there over that South Caldera, but those have been happening all the time. It's more the lack of anywhere else that's the real story here, rather than the presence of these. Because if you go back in time, from the last 20 to the last day, you see that actually there have been a whole bunch for the last day, but not recently, not that many, outside of these ones over here. Going back to the last week, you can see the area expands quite a bit, right? Going back to the whole last month, and that includes, you know, 17,670 earthquakes. You guys can see that area in the south actually is quite expanded, right? So that sits right within, see these red ones down here, this sits right within the area, actually much within. The area goes so much farther out of where we've had these South Caldera earthquakes all there. So that's the story with the summit earthquakes there, you know. So it seems like without knowing exactly what's happening up there, if major changes happen at the summit, you know, whether it's the lava is diverted from going in the rift zone into the summit, or whether it's backed up, or whether it's reached some kind of equilibrium. It's hard to say what the cause actually is, but what we do know is that, you know, probably most importantly, the tilt meter at the summit is kind of flattened out, and also the three-point earthquakes are not happening as frequently anymore. So there's that. So let me now turn to the images that we have, and these are by Scott Wilson of Aloha Skies Aviation. Thanks for joining us, Scott. I should have tagged you earlier in the posts. I don't know why I do it after the fact, but we will. And let me show you guys what is going on here. So this image that Scott took this afternoon is of Pohoiki boat ramp still being there. Here's the active flow. You guys can see the area of concern is because the lava is actually working out along the coast from the ocean entry towards the boat ramp, and this is a kind of active low. But inland of there, we don't see really a whole lot of activity. Farther up, it's mostly that edge right there, which is still very threatening, and we're kind of hoping that that'll kind of get cut off as the supply of lava that's reaching this area we expect to be less, and we'll kind of go through why we think that actually is. So this is an image from this afternoon evening of Fissure 8. Thanks once again to Scott Wilson with Aloha Skies Aviation. There's Fissure 8 among the line of fissures, which are still steaming, producing lava river. It's not shooting in the air nearly as much. It's kind of bubbling up in that one area, maybe ponding, the pilots have been reporting. And it may be that at the surface you don't really see it connected, but that thing is probably pretty deep, and it may connect underneath that surface to the channel and kind of still feed it to some degree, just not with as much lava coming out as before. And the flow is going through the channel. It's fairly similar to how it's been, except maybe moving a little slower, kind of all the way to right in here. And then right in here, there's some kind of blockage where the flow doesn't make it all the way through as one fluid unit. It seems to have changed to more of an flow texture as it moves through here as well. Farther down, you hardly see any of the red through the crust, because since it gets some red through the crust there's some red in the crust, a little bit there, a little bit there, some down here. But in fact, I suspect that the crust of the flow that's kind of cooled is insulating in the middle, and there's probably a gooey core in there. It's like a lava tube that's formed inside of this channel. And it's probably better to think of this as not all the way dried lava, but more as lava tubes. They're kind of cooled on the surface, and there's like a goo moving through the middle of them still. And that's because of what I'll show you guys kind of next. Well, when we get a little farther down to the bend, different view of Fissure 8. Here's that kind of upper, more fluid lava. The blockage is happening in here. You guys can see it's actually making its way through and leaking down. Here's where it's actually red and glowing, there and there. And you guys can see that in this north branch, it looks totally crusted over. You don't see any red at all, but we have some suspicion that there might be some lava possibly still flowing through there in a similar kind of lava tube situation. So we'll kind of see about that, what the thermal image might indicate. And actually we see glow here, and then further down over here as well. So there it is. Let's keep moving. As long as the connection's good, here's the area down by Pohoiki, and here's where it gets really interesting. Because here's our area of our blockage that actually diverted the river on July 10th. Actually, the blockage was farther up here, and it kind of worked its way back and ponded over here and spilled over going to the south towards Pohoiki, which is way down there right now. And you guys can see that even though there has been crusting over, this was the case as it was yesterday, the lava is still kind of working its way through and coming out the bottom and feeding a big flow down here. That flow is kind of moving farther over to the west in this upper area, way up here. But the amount coming out is definitely not the same as the amount coming in. We mentioned that even yesterday, right? And so what's been new is that somehow the lava has pushed its way back through the lava tube between this area all the way down and popped out down here in the Four Corners area. So here's Four Corners, right? Here's the other little pool, just northeast of there, right? And so somehow through the middle of all this, lava pushed back through the tube, and it's been spilling over now in the Four Corners area. Some of this is actually going back into the old channel, wrapping around towards the east side of what used to be Green Lake. But a big globe of it is actually spilled out towards the north, right? And this kind of looks like filling this area and may potentially go around this cone, and is actually going to put this burial ground at risk over here. So I know some of you guys watching are concerned about that. We'll have to keep a close eye on how this develops as far as how it impacts that particular area right over there. So we're not sure how much this is going to stay established, whether it's going to stay established, whether it was like a kind of a burst that came through, or whether it's like now an open established pathway that's not going to get clogged again, that's going to keep lava flowing back in the Kīlauea direction. Hopefully within the channel and back over the old flow field, but it looks like there's a chance it might actually spill out over here as well. So we'll have to see how that develops, especially. But while this increases the threat for the areas to the north of here now, it does change the story a little bit for Pohoiki, because definitely not all the lava is going down there anymore. Some of it's diverting over here, and that can only be a good thing for those of us who are kind of, all waiting and bated breath every day to see what the updates bring as far as lava flow getting closer to the boat ramp or not. So, so there it is. One thing to notice is that even though you don't see the lava on the surface between this part right here and ocean entry is still going strong in this photograph. So it's still going through from this into the tube system. The tube system is likely pretty extensive through here, and even after the flow stops at the top, it can kind of cut off and still drain for a ways. So any kind of interruption, like whether it's like a low and a surge and a low and a surge, it basically just tops it back off, and it can keep flowing through that tube system for a while going in the ocean. So that's kind of hard to see exactly how that's networked underneath that kind of thick crust that's developed there, that we don't even see under the thermal images that well. So This image was from sometime, I would like to say around 5 p.m. or so, maybe slightly earlier, maybe 4 p.m., somewhere in there, so I'm not sure. It seems like most of the bulk of this flow is moving over here, a little farther over from the burial ground, so I'm not sure how close it actually is. I just know that now I know that they're there, and I know that they're an important, very important site for locals especially, and that this flow is now threatening that area. So I don't know where it's going. I don't know if this thing kind of stalled out. I don't know more about it than what we see in this photograph right here, but I just wanted to point it out that this is the first sign we've had of that threat existing. Yeah, so that's what's going on there. So let's keep moving. Here's a reverse angle view. Pu'ukapoho is now over here. So Fissure 8 is from that way. It comes over here. The blockage area here, spilling over down towards Pohoiki, fanning out this flow that I'm going to show you guys right now. There is that flow, and you kind of see the edge of it. It's kind of making this big tongue on the top. Maybe it's filling the channel, maybe going through a tube underneath here as well. It's hard to say. Sometimes these tubes have multiple levels, right? Kind of one level, like a low level that kind of forms a little cross over top of it, and then a higher level that can kind of go above that, almost like, you know, when we see this overplating things, it's going over top of that, but still staying kind of within some kind of channel. So something along those lines. It's almost like a tube-in-tube system. And so here you see the flow kind of coming down and fanning out, and actually burning a little bit of new ground over here on that west side of the flow in this upper area right through here. Right, most of the flow is going through here, and then somewhere in here it's going to the tubes. We don't see it before it actually goes back into the tube system to the ocean. So this is a view of Four Corners. This way is towards a lighthouse over here. Here's a pu'u, and the burial grounds are up here. So you guys can see why I'm so concerned, because this flow has got a lot of big lobe. This lobe is moving that way over here. This is just kind of creeping out to the side, but there's a little bit of active flow going this way and that way and that way. It's really downhill this way over here. So if this flow can somehow find that path out, I should divert most of the flow back in this direction over here. Unfortunately, the few houses that remain are kind of in that right along the edge of the flow over here, so that would put them back at risk. But that's the direction the flow could take, is either that way, or it can kind of go north around and wrap around the cinder cone, and that's what puts the burial ground at risk. Is if that happens, if this large lobe over here takes over and actually goes back and up and around. So that's why we're concerned over there. Notice there's also a spillover on the south side of this, right along that edge of Pu'ukapoho Green Mountain once again, right over there. So it's kind of filling in that back area once again as well. Okay, so keeping moving down to the ocean entry. There's that area. Pu'ukapoho is right there. So actually the flow is split, going partly that way and partly this way now, and it's in tubes all the way down to here, going in the ocean. You guys can see it's mostly in the middle now, not so much in the north. And there's an area still in the south over here, all the way to there, right? You guys can still see fuming and glowing, and the boat ramp is right around the corner right up there. Right around the corner right up there. So that's why the concern really is right along that ocean. It's been kind of fanning out towards the boat ramp in that direction along the ocean. So looking farther upslope, we don't see any kind of glow or red of anything along the margin all the way up until we get to right up in here, which is where we show you the close-up, which is right there. So it's going through the tubes all through there and kind of feeding. Let's go back to the photograph where we started, and there's a boat ramp, and there's that lobe from above, and kind of filling in the rest of the bay of what used to be around all the way to the side of here, right next to dead trees. So there is that's what we got as far as the photographs. These are all from Aloha Skies Aviation by Scott Wilson, reliable information source in the sky. He's been flying more often than anyone else, and just to kind of recap what he said, that the lava coming out of Fissure 8 was really, really slow, almost kind of just ponding and like kind of bubbling in there rather than shooting up and out. So it seems like that's a clear sign of decrease in the volume, which we've been kind of hinting, we've seen signs of for the last probably a couple weeks, when we started seeing this kind of surge and lull cycle kind of begin, and then, cycle of stagnation and blockages and overflows and those kind of things. I know that the pattern has kind of changed over time, but once we start seeing the pulses and different amounts of upwellings in the cone, those kind of things. Even recently, that 4.1 earthquake we had a few days ago, that was on the south flank, close to where the 6.9 actually occurred. and discuss the possibility of that, you know, maybe relieving some of the pressure. It's not clear if that's at all what happened, but you know, there's that, you know, all these different individual signs. We've had one at a time, one here, one there, seem to have finally have come all together, and so it does seem like we are seeing some kind of ending, you know. But just to remind you guys, these things are drawn out with volcanoes. The ending could take from a few days to a few weeks, you know, depending on how it actually pressurizes, can release the pressure, essentially. It could be that, you know, best case that it's like in a tube system and the flow is kind of reduced to a trickle, and it could kind of trickle out the rest of the pressure out through the tube into the ocean in a way that it actually exists. It's possible that it can start clogging back up, and it might keep coming out of fissure 8, but come out, you know, more episodically, like almost like a geyser kind of thing, where it might kind of spurt up a little bit and then stop, and then spurt up a little bit and then stop, you know, something like that's possible as well. It's possible it could clog up longer than that and back up and come out of, you know, some other weak spot, including the summit up by Halemaumau. In the long term, we do expect lava to go back into the summit caldera, because that's the you know, the spot it comes out most often than any other time. You know, if you look at the height of the ground on a whole volcano, it's the highest point is right around the summit caldera, and you know, that kind of would indicate that most of the time it comes out of the ground there and fills that area first. So having a hole up there, you know, is not going to last that long. It's going to start getting filled in by various eruptions, whether they happen sooner or later. To us as people, you know, to the volcano, it can take, you know, a few years and erupt in there again, and it basically is, you know, just the next step forward within a cycle of, you know, the long weeks and months and years it takes for the pressures to equalize themselves in this kind of volcanic system, as we've all experienced already here, as we've already broken a record for the number of days that this eruption is gone in the Lower East Rift in Western human memory. So there it is, you know, big changes, kind of not sure what to make of them. You know, the big thing that kind of stands out to me is the fact that if we have a big breakout, let me show you guys a picture again, let me bring it back up. If we have this breakout that's moving back to the Four Corners area, right, here's our photograph by Scott Wilson from Aloha Skies. If we have a channel that's coming in here and it's splitting and part of it's draining towards Pohoiki, but there's still enough pressure to push back through and reopen this tube that's been closed for 3 weeks, enough to push lava out of the other side and start this big flow that from above looks like this, right? There's Four Corners and there's a lighthouse, you know, going that way. And then to push that thing open, you must have had a good amount of pressure. And that much pressure, to me, means we have to have some kind of tube system that's actually allowing that pressure to kind of somewhat be maintained by the essentially the fluid pressure pushing down through the tube. So there's the actual glow within the crack of the crust there, and they're all the way up. It could be lava flowing down through the whole thing still, through the deeper part of the channel, from the deeper part of the opening, you know, kind of just to play skeptic here. It could be still pumping all the way through, pushing everything through, and actually, you know, possibly moving through here as well. Let's look at the thermal map actually next after this. And pressurizing all the way to the point where we're going to actually push open that opening once again. In fact, the reports earlier from Jason Twillman talked about how the lava the outflows down there had actually kind of risen out of the channel, and that kind of corresponds to what I'm discussing. I think must have happened, right? Imagine the pressure of the lava kind of backing up, trying to push into that little hole, and it kind of keeps backing up, rising out of its channel on the backside, showing how much pressure really is there, and finally being able to push through and burst out the other side and feed this at the moment of this photograph, fairly sizable flow right there. Actually, this earlier photograph, you can kind of see this lobe is just kind of got two little fingers, and the one I showed you guys next up here, those two fingers are getting more active and kind of feeding a bigger front kind of ahead of it right there. So that's kind of the thing kind of holding me back from saying, oh, okay, it's all going to end quickly. Because if there's that much pressure, that means there's a lot of lava coming out of fissure 8 still, even if we don't see it kind of moving at the surface. You know, it could be kind of just ponding at the surface, but back to the original ground level of where that thing actually built, where the crack came out of the ground in Leilani, you know, when it first happened, all the way down to that level, the lava could be kind of flowing to the channel from way down there and kind of out of sight. You know, there were many times when Pu'u'o was erupting that there would be some kind of like lava lake at the surface, or even a crusted over surface, and we knew it was going into the cone and out of a lava tube out of the side of the cone and going down towards the ocean that way. So we definitely know that's possible, and that's why I'm kind of hesitant to say that, just, you know, the fact that we see. Nope, there I'm green again. I'm green, so hopefully you guys, yeah, let's see. Hopefully this is still working. But yeah, what I was basically saying is that, you know, what gives me pause is that, you know, the lava pressure to build back up and push the channel push the lava out of the channel, kind of rise up above it, push back through the old lava tube, send out a big flow. This size flow must be a lot of pressure, and that must mean that a lot of lava is still coming out of fissure 8. Even if we don't actually see it at the surface, you know, at the surface could be actually appear like it's ponding the original ground level below fissure 8, below that whole lava shield and cinder and spatter cone that's on top of the thing now. Back where the original crack at ground level used to be is where lava can still kind of move from there into that channel area. So it could be feeding a channel at a deeper level than we can see, and feeding lava tubes that way. And that's kind of what I'm wary of actually might be going on, because you need some kind of continual flow to actually have pressure to bust open that signal going down towards the Four Corners area. So that's kind of what gives me pause. You know, looking forward, you know, we see that actually there's the blockage at for longer if I can get green. There's my green signal. Okay, I'm back, you guys. So there you go. Talking with John Stallman earlier, he also suggested, you know, that everyone was reminded of what we've been talking about for a while, that these kind of ending phases of the eruptions could actually bring a lot of instability and flows in areas it hasn't touched before. You know, we should all be very vigilant and careful and be on alert as far as that goes. But one thing that's really interesting is that there was some discussion on Hawaii Tracker with Dan DuPont and some of the other guys in there who were talking about how the AA flows, now that flows are now AA, that Jason reported AA flow is kind of backing up and building that great height. Now that they're kind of pushing their way through, would they actually push the lava more in a straight, kind of along a straight channel rather than trying to make any of these bends and kind of jump the banks anywhere? And so it seems like that may have actually happened. You know, John is pointing this out, how possibly the fact that the old channel was activated may have something to do with the geometry, the fact that this is actually straight from the pressure of the flow. So all that backup that Jason reported was happening over here, and that backup happening over here was kind of acting as a push in a direction, in a straight direction of the backup, which is kind of a straight line of the channel going straight into the old channel, which maybe popped it back open and pushed lava back out that direction over there. So that's a kind of interesting thought that we had. Something might be going on there, and we're interested to see if that kind of goes back in the channel, whether it's just a burst or whether something else actually is going to come of it. I wanted to show you guys while my signal is still green. Let me go to my, did the earthquakes already? Let me go to my thermal map. So there's a thermal map that was released at noon from signal game here. Okay guys, back to green. So let's try the thermal map again. It doesn't seem like the thermal map. Let's try it again. Alright, thermal map that was released, or actually scanned from yesterday. Well, actually, what does it say? August 3rd, 12:30 a.m. So this was a little while ago, actually, probably during that surge time, right? If I'm not mistaken. So Fissure 8, the lava channel is full. There's been a spillover in an area by PGV. There's been that spillover that we talked about with Andrew that happened during a lull before the surge, where it actually had some kind of blockage here and covered the island and burned some of the trees right there. There's a much bigger spillover that happened more recently. You guys can see covering most of this area over here. And then also a spillover happening down here by a farms area, Cinder Road area, all through here. Look at that's a massive pond. Here's where it was kind of still open and going through. This is the area that was crusted over already right in here. You guys can kind of see the gray area is a crust forming already. It's still really hot and very thin, but it's kind of moving underneath that area, and now that kind of has expanded and kind of worked its way down farther over and farther up too, right? And possibly all the way back up and around. But during this actual just post-surge image, you guys can see that lobe of fresh stuff still kind of rising up and building up the height of this big pile in a corner right over here. You guys notice there's actually still no heat of this lava we just discussed being reactivated today. No heat all the way to Four Corners area that we can see right there. And the flow is actually expanding out to the side all the way, leaking out both sides, east and west, and kind of one big lobe expanding over here to the southwest from this main channel that was kind of feeding all the tubes going through this system. Like, this is part of the surge that really fed the advance of the ocean that is going towards Pohoiki. So there we have it. You know, the spillovers happen not just to the north up here, but to the south as well. And this was kind of before everything's drained away. This is the last time it was high, and it's drained all the way down since then. And that's the info we have right now. I keep thinking, you know, that maybe the next thing we're you know, as Ikaika said, there's kind of two ways this could go from here. As far as lava coming out of Fissure 8 itself, you know, collapse events. If a collapse event happens again, then it's gonna be hitting a lot of those clogs, and it could spill over anywhere along that Fissure 8 channel area, that whole 7.5 miles of it, unfortunately. So the risk is kind of growing with the instability of the thing kind of appearing to start winding down here. I don't need to talk about all the like, you know, the bad things that could happen, but we just need to be on alert that, you know, a lot of changes could actually happen that could be really impactful as far as where lava goes, and hopefully it doesn't go anywhere it hasn't gone already and destroy anything new that still can be helped at this point. So let me take some of the questions as long as my connection is still good. So let's see here. What's happening now is inconsistent with the USGS stated 2 weeks ago. So the USGS stated 2 weeks ago that the eruption was thought to kind of go for months to years. You know, we always knew that years was possible based on the fact that Pu'o exists and Hulu exists. But the whole time I've been still saying, even during the report came out, that more likely if you were actually had to bet, you would bet on the fact that it was like a months-long eruption. And it's hard to say months from when, exactly months from the beginning of the thing, you know, months altogether, or months from when they actually issued a report. Maybe it doesn't matter that much. You know, I've kind of been saying from the beginning, I thought that, you know, 3 months was a reasonable target, maybe 4 months if it kind of is a less usual event. And, you know, maybe, you know, thinking about it in hindsight, it's been unusual in a lot of ways. So 4 months might actually be kind of the benchmark for this thing. So it could be, to me, I've still thought that once the things, you know, shows signs of ending, it could actually take a couple weeks for it to actually end. You know, maybe it'll be as quick as a couple of days, we could hope. But it may actually go on for a few weeks still of the kind of winding down and being, you know, variable in its pressure and like where the lava flow is coming out or how often and what it looks like and where the threat actually is, that we may go back into that unstable phase once again where we have to be on our toes a lot more than before. So we'll see how that actually goes. But, you know, I think we'd be better off being on alert and having nothing happening than, you know, having something that catches us by surprise, because we're all kind of used to it all being where it's been and nothing really changing that fast. So we're kind of in a period now where we really need to be alert for any big changes without knowing what they might actually be and when they might happen, where they might happen. And meanwhile, we can still hope that they actually don't happen. So that's kind of, you know, my take on that, you know, I would say, okay, you know, this kind of tells us that we're not looking at months anymore. We're probably looking at weeks at most of this eruption lasting from this point. That's probably what I'd say. And, you know, maybe USGS will come out and say that as well. But we'll have to wait and see what their take is on this actually after all is said and done. So the hurricane is still coming. It's kind of being adjusted back and forth, and we'll kind of see, you know, whether it actually comes and affects us directly. But it seems like the waves are going to hit us no matter what. That seems fairly clear. So that whole bench area in Kapoho especially is the one that kind of is at risk for collapse. So we'll see. You know, I know for sure there's some cracks in that area down over there, and new Kapoho coastline. So we'll see what that hurricane actually does as far as the waves, kind of eroding some of that ground and kind of settling it, causing some small little slides, possibly some small little collapses. We might have some new bays forming after this. We'll have to wait and see. Maybe some new fishing spots. But we'll have to wait for the hurricane to come through to actually see that. I don't expect any real impact of the hurricane on the volcano itself. Maybe more steam, harder to see things because it might be more rainy. You know, the wind could blow some more of this hot, flaky lava rock into dry areas, but you know, with all the rain, maybe that's not as likely. And you know, now that the channel is kind of a lot lower, maybe not as likely either, right? There's not as much heat that is actually causing those little whirlwinds to form. So you guys want to check out the seismograph? Okay, I got one still too. Let's see. Now we have a little sign of life in the seismograph right here, you know, a small little earthquake. I'm not sure if it was bigger than a 3, maybe not. It might have been a 2 point something, 2.5, 2.8, maybe 2.9. I'm not that good at kind of analyzing it, but it actually will show up at the bottom if it is identified as magnitude 3 or higher. So that's just one earthquake, and you know, I would expect earthquakes to continue for a while. Actually, you know, it could be that there's still a long period of settling with with earthquakes happening, just not on the same rate as before. The numbers and frequency that we were seeing before, it might kind of slow down like everything else for a while. Okay, so let's see, someone is asking to see the thermal map once again. Let me see if I can get that up for you guys. So, map. Alright, so interesting thing is happening in a thermal map where the land that's new land offshore is actually settling in such a way that there's more heat coming from it. So maybe it's not quite clear, but Pukapoho is right here. That's Green Mountain. And there's a Hokapoho Delta right in there. And actually out here you guys can see this brighter area, lighter gray, as opposed to darker gray, is actually a stronger heat signal coming from lava that's actually offshore. So the old coastline is more or less like that, right? With the exception of Kapoho Bay, which was this little piece sticking out, and it kind of came in like this. Lava kind of piled high in the bay, so it doesn't look quite the same as the original coastline. But kind of around this way, like that, is where the bay actually was, and the old coastline up there. So kind of the shape of this brighter, lighter gray area kind of through here is the shape of the land, and kind of pushes out down here. It's a little harder to tell. It's not quite as old, not as cool. Where the new land begins and where the old land ends, right in there. So that's what we got going on. That's the ocean right there. Let me go back to these earthquakes. And so here's Kīlauea today. Let's zoom out for those of you guys who are asking about what else is happening on the island. Let's let it refresh here and look at my signal. So there is nothing happening in any other volcano than Kīlauea on this plot of the earthquakes today. Let's look at the last 7 days. See what pops up. Continue. Okay, so there are a number under Mauna Loa. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 in a week. So 2 a day, 15, 16, 15 maybe, 2 a day. Maybe maybe 3 a day if you maybe are generous and include these, but these ones might actually be Kīlauea related over here. So not enough yet to actually be considered a swarm, anything like that. So nothing's happening in Mauna Loa. It may still be showing signs of settling, or, you know, of a magma that inflated into there over the last few years. So that's all still normal in Mauna Loa. Mauna Loa will erupt again, you know, just to be clear, you know, it's just not doing it right now. So, and it may be that may be the next chapter in the story. At some point in the next few years, we'll, you know, might have to you know, have to talk about Mauna Loa a little more as well. But for now, our focus is on Kīlauea. So there's our earthquakes, and we've talked about the levels of Fissure 8. There's our lava cam, lavacam.org, and there's still plenty of glow. Lava's still there. So yeah, it's just not coming out as much as before, but it's still coming out. And, you know, even if it's coming out, you know, 1/10 of before, like the levels of Pohoiki, that's still a lot of lava, as we all know, enough to cause a lot of trouble. So just kind of, you know, we can be optimistic at this point. We should be cautious about the, you know, the fact that things can change and spill over in areas we haven't seen before. And really, you know, that's kind of the crux of it. If a collapse event does happen overnight, then a surge may actually be trouble in the morning because of all the blockage and slowdown that's happening in there. I basically think at this point there's, you know, several blockages. There's a blockage that's kind of throttling things towards Pohoiki. The blockage now towards Four Corners, which is opened. The Four Corners is actually, the blockage has got weaker. The blockage Pohoiki has got stronger. But they're both there. There's a blockage above the first braid, which seems to be pretty strong. The blockage above the second braid, somewhere in the middle of the upper braid, in fact, is not as strong. I meant the lower braid is the one that's actually strongly blocked. And then above there, where the lava is kind of changing from its kind of pooling nature to the first noticeable stage, there's probably a block right in the area as well. So there's a bunch of blocks in there, lots of different blocks. And that means that if a surge does happen, it could hit any of those blocks and spill out anywhere, right? And those areas would be around PGV, possibly within Leilani, possibly in the Papaya Farms, Noni Farms Road area, and possibly down in the Four Corners, Green Mountain area once again. So that is those are the areas that are at risk if a surge happens, you know, if kind of a change, a pulse happens, that kind of thing as well. So you guys just reminded me of something. Let me see if I can pull up here something on the HVO site. And while I do that, someone is asking for my opinion on Dutch Sense guy. The guy is looking at data very closely, that's for sure, but I think that he is making patterns out of things that are not real patterns. You have to really be careful, right? Because, you know, I could actually like flip a coin a bunch of times, or, you know, throw a dart at a dartboard a bunch of times, and, you know, get a bunch of patterns out of that, and then, you know, make up a story of why those patterns happen to be, and it might have just been random chance. So that's we got to be really careful. You know, the little that I've seen of him has been a waste of my time so far. So I've never made it into the videos far enough beyond the initial part to actually see anything meaningful, and I'll kind of leave it at that. So, but what I wanted to show you guys is that there are, let's see here, can I find them? Can I find these webcams? No, I don't see them on the site right now, but there are new webcams that have been kind of fluttering off and on from USGS that show some of the other downrift areas. So we're going to try to get those pinpointed for you guys and shared on Tracker if we haven't shared them there already. we'll figure out where those areas actually are. As far as my app on Android, I haven't had a chance to work on it very much recently, but I hope to still soon. So now that we have a change in the work hours of the hub, I hope to get to that shortly. So hopefully make some progress on that again soon. What else? Fissures uprift are a concern still until the thing is all the way over. They're a concern. They're at the moment no more of a concern anywhere before. I am concerned about that, but until I see, you know, and just to be clear, you know, I've actually seen, and I've actually seen reports, I haven't seen it myself, that there are cracks in the area around 130 that are actually still moving, steaming more potentially, you know, widening in fact. Even, and I've kind of tried to warn that even as the magma pressure beneath there kind of drops off, we should see the ground settling as well. So, you know, the fact that cracks are moving, opening on one side, maybe it could be pinch and close on the opposite side. The other side of that block, that crack is kind of on the edge of on both sides. That's very possible. And we know the area is very weak because of that. And it just depends, like whether the pressure builds up. Like if the opening at fissure 8 stays open, then it seems less likely that the uprift fissures are a problem. But if fissure 8 stops flowing altogether, then I become more worried about those uprift fissures, depending on what kind of tilt signal we see, right? So if we see for example that fissure 8 becomes blocked and we see the tilt signal starting to increase all of a sudden, and we know magma is backing up pressure underground there, then we'll know, okay, well, it's building pressure underground there again, and now maybe that combined with earthquakes, yes, thank you, would be an indication that those fissures might reactivate, or that lava may come out of a crack in the ground farther up rift, where it hasn't come out of the ground yet. So that's kind of my take on that. So I'm not worried about it quite yet. They are still in play as far as that goes, but we would want to see the tilt signal, the earthquakes, and a blockage of fissure 8, like all those things before we're really all the way worried about those uprift areas. Okay, so you guys see an earthquake? Let's see if I can pull it up here. Let's see what's going on. Did we have an earthquake here? Oh yeah, there's an earthquake. Now it's a little stronger. It's not pulling it up as a magnitude 3 or higher though. So it must have been another high 2. Well, that one was a 2.1, right? That one came in, you guys can see now. It shows a 2.1. And this one is not quite done computing, perhaps. So it'll come up a little stronger than that. But it's not a really big one either. So, yep, there's not definitely still, you know, even the one earthquake here, you know, that's basically had 2. That one, if that one is a little one, then we basically have still only had 1 in the last 20 minutes. Is unlike, I mean, we've seen, you know, usually 3 to 5 of those. So it could be that it may be that we're not going to see another collapse event at the summit. And if that's the case, then we'll all be thankful. It could be that the interval, you know, really greatness. Maybe we have 1 or 2 more collapses in us, but maybe it won't happen for a day or a couple days, and a week from now, kind of thing. You know, I still think that we kind of need to wait a couple weeks to be really sure of the thing actually winding down all the way. So I haven't calculated now, but we're probably at 60 hours since the last collapse event, so we're way overdue. And you know, I would expect one if I saw any of these earthquakes kind of building up ahead of time, but since none of them are happening, I don't think anything's building up. We're not building up to the 5 actually at all. And for those of you guys that maybe have joined us late, let me show you guys a tilt plot once again. So here's our tilt plot, kind of zoomed in. Here's our kind of magnitude 3 earthquakes as we've had them, kind of slowing down, a few less, and then none since before noon today, right? A little bit, and the actual tilt plot kind of really flattened out quite a bit. Maybe still going downhill a little bit. At the very back right here, looks like it's actually flat in that very last little stretch right there. So, kind of zooming out, looking at the past week, right? There's a pattern from the last cycle. We normally have a bunch of these 3s kind of building up. and then a big one, and then quiet, and then kind of building up, and then that's not how it's been. No quiet, and then flattening right here, so you guys can kind of see this is probably a flatter line right there than at any point at any of the previous collapse events, right? That's why some people are really convinced that that's a very, very important signal right there. So there it is. All right, we're getting reports of that earthquake being in Pahala, 2.1 in Pahala. Let's see if our seismographs have updated spectrographs. And it doesn't show it quite yet, but we know that's probably going to be true. You guys are all great at looking at information as well. So, all right, let me see if there's any more questions. The collapse at Tevel. I think I just talked about the tilt being level. Maybe that's what you're talking about right there. More cracks in Leilani, so yeah, that's similar to what I've seen on reported before, as well as we're at 130. So that's to be expected. You know, like I said, this thing may actually end ugly. So with more of these cracks and earthquakes, I do think that it actually. So yeah, I think as far as school goes, yeah, I mean I think Pahoa School is safe. It's way out of the way right now. If anything, the biggest danger would be the gases coming out. Gas is going to be coming out for a while. So I don't know. Depending on the winds, you might just train your kids to, when they smell VOG, to just minimize their exposure right there, because it's kind of a long-term thing, right? It's like more of a chronic issue rather than like a one-time exposure kind of deal. So, and in fact, my kid goes to volcano school, and the volcano school is a place that I'm deeming my kids safe to go to as well, and it's actually all the way up, much closer to the caldera than we live. But to me, as far as the summit goes, so when I mentioned the water table as well, the way the water works its way in there is fairly slow, considering how hot those rocks all are. So that I wouldn't expect like a sudden change. I could be wrong, but everything that we believe of how the process works is that we need to have some kind of sudden juxtaposition between the water table and the hot rocks. So it's more likely that there will be explosions at the beginning of the next eruption when lava comes back into the volcano. So if it's the case that the summit starts re-inflating, and it could be that that's what comes next. So looking at this tilt plot once again, we're at level. The level could happen because, for example, the collapse can't occur anymore. That's kind of sagged down as far as it could go right in there. It could be that it's being fed from below now, and it's actually fed from below and maybe cut off, not going to the rift zone anymore, but going straight up. It could be that it's actually coming up and it's going to start increasing again, and that might be the beginning of something different. And if that would be the case, we'll have to reassess. But as it is, we don't see that signal yet. It looks like things are really slowing down, and until I see that kind of change, I think Volcano School is also safe to go. In fact, we'll go talk to Volcano School. School starts in a couple of days up there. If we start seeing that kind of thing, earthquakes, inflation of the volcano, magma coming in, signs where we might be anticipating an explosion, then I would say, okay, maybe those days are not the best days to be up there, but most of the time, most of the year, it's going to be fine. So that's my word in the schools, and a little bit more on that kind of tilt pattern right there. So right now, okay, let's see. Someone's asking about the little island. The little island that was out offshore, off like a Poho, has actually been joined as a little isthmus back to the main piece of land. Possibly I can pull it up for you guys. I think there's a photo of that not that long ago, put up by the USGS. So let me see if I can pull it up. Might be the easiest, quickest place for me to get it for you guys. So let me see if I can find it. Just a minute. Yep, there it is. All right, so our little island that existed. Loading. There's how it looks now. It's attached to the mainland by a little peninsula, a bunch of sand, but it's also kind of collapsed. It was quite a bit taller before than that. The fact that lava was kind of pushing out from below under the water meant there's definitely a tube, like, you know, a similar thing. This big pancake was kind of thick crust on top, but kind of still oozing out from below, and there's actually a whole bunch of lava kind of oozing underwater we probably never actually saw. So, there is that. Yeah, you guys are seeing rain. Yes, I do need to get some rest. I'm heading that way after my update's done. Let's see. Nanavale is still basically in the same situation as before. You know, just like everyone else, we're on a higher alert now for things changing and new things happening. But for Nanavale, we still need to have a several-step process. First, we need to have a breach of somewhere up in the upper part of the channel where it would actually fill in part of Leilani more. So you'd have to have a flow in Leilani first. Then it would have to flow down past Leilani, down towards the area of Noni Farms Road. It would have to stall over there, break out from Leilani again, and then Nanavale is impacted kind of from that point forward. You know, once the flow gets out of Leilani, essentially it kind of starts getting higher chance of impact to Nanavale. So until then, Nanavale for now is no. All right, back to green. So yeah, sorry guys, I cut out again. So I think I'm back. Connection's going in and out. Yeah, you guys have been hearing the rain. And so we'll see. What's next? Thank you guys who have supported us at HawaiiTracker.com. You probably have all heard about that by now, so I don't want to repeat myself too much. We're going to have some other info going up. We'll release at some point coming up. But let's see, for now, Kalapana I think is still fine because Chinakritter Resort is still passable. There were some reports earlier that last earthquake had cracked the road to make it impassable. That's not true. They actually did a drive-through. Park reported that day that everything was still passable. I think the reports were from earlier, from a different part of the park. So Chinakritter's Road is still passable for evacuation if it comes to that. In fact, there's no sign of that happening yet. So there you go, guys. I'm kind of cut out in and out, and I see I just hit the hour mark, so I'm gonna sign off here. Thank you guys for joining me. We'll check in the morning. We'll see if we actually have another collapse event by morning, or if we are still going. You know, at this point, I'm expecting there not to be a collapse event, given the lack of seismicity. We can take another quick look over here and see what it actually shows. Let's see what our signal shows. Just gonna refresh first. So it's pretty quiet still. Yep, so not that many earthquakes up there, so probably not a collapse coming, I don't think. At least not until we see that kind of sign change. So, you know, I'm gonna kind of go to sleep a little more restful than I've been as far as I'm expecting a surge and whatever else. You know, it may be that we still have a couple of those collapses coming, but it may be a couple weeks out. So we'll see how that actually plays out. You know, I think it actually, you know, like I said, may take a couple weeks to end all the way. I'll be surprised and happy if it actually is shorter than that. But you know, it could be that things actually slow down, like in a day by day, where we actually have tangible physical things we can point to as like steps in the right direction every day from here on out. So we'll see that, and we'll talk about it again in the morning, seeing what else we see. And once again, thanks so much to Scott Wilson and Aloha Skies Aviation, who are providing all those photographs that I showed you guys earlier today, kind of showing the progress and showing the real dramatic changes. You know, imagine if we didn't have those to go on, how much information we'd be missing today and wondering about tomorrow. So thanks so much to Scott, and thank you guys. And all the crew at Hawaii Tracker was helping put all the info together. Done actually a lot of the work themselves, and I'm just piggybacking on that, kind of giving you guys the live version of it. You know, those guys are doing a huge amount of work. So props to you guys, Ryan and Dane and Les and Sarah and Harry and Ken and Andrew and all the other guys who are involved there. So thank you, everyone. It's quite a crew. And thank you guys for watching once again. And you know, we'll go to bed hopeful and see what this brings us in the morning. So until then, mahalo and stay classy, Puna.